Hey, we're live.
So welcome to our April 18th, 2024 member exclusive webinar in our Peplink topical series that we co-host with our friends at Mobile Must Have.
And this is a series that we normally do as just for our members, but this one we're going to do something a little bit different. For one, we're using some fancy new production software, so fingers crossed we have no little glitches here that lets us do graphics and slides rather than just share in a Zoom. And two, because we're being a little fancy with this, we're going to record this in a way to actually make this a public share on YouTube after our members have had some exclusive time with this as a tease for what sort of our member exclusive webinars are like.
So if you enjoy content like this one will be a high-level overview of a bunch of different features that Peplink has in their hardware and software. But if you like to go in-depth with this sort of content, we actually have this webinar every single month with Mobile Must Have going deep dive into a lot of these topics. If this is the sort of content that you enjoy, please do consider becoming a member. You can join directly with the Mobile Internet Resource Center at rvmobileinternet.com. Or if you're considering a purchase with Mobile Must Have anyway, they do sell their own membership that includes membership to our site as well.
We kind of work hand in hand. We're pretty good buddies there.
So with that said, we're going to turn this over to our hosts this afternoon, Chris and Eric, and I'll be working the chat room over there.
Yes, so and, let's see how this goes. Let's bring on Eric. Hey, I'm Chris, the co-founder of the Mobile Internet Resource Center. Been a full-time tech nomad since 2006. I just had my 18th nomadiversary, which blogged about over at technomadia.com. So sharing about 18 years on the road, and a lot of it, well, all of it has been keeping connected. So keeping connected has become kind of the thing we do. And one of the fun things we've turned our business into is co-hosting this monthly webinar with Erik of Mobile Must Have. So Erik, you want to say hello?
Yeah. So my name's Erik. I'm the founder of Mobile Must Have. I, previous to that, ran a blog called liveandlight.net where we shared our travels. My wife and I and our family on the road. We hit the road back in 2015 in our Class A motorhome, and we're full-time until about 3 years ago when we had 2 children. So I've got 2 young boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and currently we spend a little over 6 months of the year on the road at this point. So yeah, and we need to stay connected because we're running businesses on the road, so it's something we live and breathe.
Yep. And so what we're doing for this month's webinar, rather than diving deep into one particular topic, we're actually kind of taking a step back to kind of geek out about, or not so much geek out, but just kind of talk about at a high level the things that have made us all fans of Peplink hardware. I mean, you sell Peplink hardware at the Mobile Internet Resource Center. We're unbiased. We play with and use everything. But even before either one of us had our own independent businesses, we were Peplink users and fans and customers. They were the choices we had made for our tech arsenals. So we're kind of going to share some of the things, the things that make Peplink hardware and software a bit unique in a unique fit for nomads like us. And that's the topic for today. So I'm going to go dive in a topic at a time here. So ready for that?
Yes, go.
Sounds great.
Yep. Here we go. So Erik, I want to talk about the business class equipment. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I started my journey with most of the stuff you find in those big box camping stores or in the catalog that your RV dealer shows you as accessories you can buy in the RV space. And my background prior to that was in enterprise IT and helping businesses stay connected. So I was a bit disappointed with the quality of the hardware that was available at the time, this is a long time ago, specific for like what I would call RV consumers. So I actually had a friend that was a police officer, and I started ripping his squad car apart, and that's how I found Peplink products, believe it or not. And then did some searches and found the Mobile Internet Resource Center, and we started talking, but fast forward to why I like Peplink hardware is its business class hardware. So you typically see the physical hardware is made out of metal and it is designed to be in mobile environments. So it's designed to run on 12 or 24 volt battery type DC power, or it can run on AC power as well. It's designed to deal with harsher environmental conditions like heat and being tucked under a police car seat and things like that. And it is designed to just work. In my experience, I've found that it has many fewer lockups, and I frequently leave my Peplink running for like months at a time, and it just keeps going. It's a bit different than what I would say like a consumer grade hotspot, which kind of, I almost have to reboot it every couple days, operates like.
That has definitely been our experience as well. We actually have had a Peplink router in our vintage bus that is in storage out in Arizona, stay up, and we keep connected to it for monitoring the security cameras for basically months and months and months or years on end. And yeah, that's sort of, there's no hardware that is, and no software that is crash proof, but they actually even do have some remediations around that, is that you can schedule auto reboots and stuff like that, just in case you think you need a little extra protection from things locking up. So, again, targeting a more of a commercial audience, and the hardware it's been impressive for all of us. Now, talk about the software evolving is another thing that has been nice, and they support old software for a long time too, which I'm pleased with, or old hardware with their software.
Yes, absolutely. So Peplink kind of takes the Apple approach to software. They have one unified operating system that runs on a $400 router or a $40,000 router. And it's the exact same hardware, or the exact same software. Because of that, that means that you will see quite a few improvements and feature upgrades and improvements, because they are upgrading that firmware or that software running on the hardware to run on pretty much their entire platforms. So, and then like you said, it's, we're frequently seeing feature improvements on routers that people purchased, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I kind of like the side effects of, because they're talking to an enterprise audience, so that customer base expects software support for a long time, so you don't have hardware phased out too quickly. And they do seem to do a really good job of listening to their customer base, and so they talk to us about what things can we do to the software that was important to the RV and boating communities. And we've been really thrilled to see specific changes we've requested show up in the software as it evolves, and they continue to come back to us like, can we make this better? What can we do for your audience? And the other thing that is kind of a side effect of the same software running on everything from $299 routers to, again, you said $40,000 routers, is a lot of high-end features end up on the really affordable hardware, just because it's there. They don't bother to disable it. So if you've got some kind of semi-advanced prosumer features that you want to dive into, they're not just removing them from the more consumer-priced options. They're there for you to dig into if you want to explore them. So stuff that's been very cool. User interface. What do you like about the user interface?
It's I think what the most common thing I hear about is it's deep enough for those that want to get super technical, and it's easy enough to use for those of us who don't care. Or just like, I just want to be on the internet, and the least amount of time I can spend thinking about it, the better. Things like this dashboard that you show here, drag and drop interface, very easy to use, very simple, but then you have the ability to dive in and get really advanced if you want to.
Yeah, it is been a pleasure to see it evolve slowly and even get better. And one of the things that we kind of steered them to is they used to have two separate user interfaces for their Balance series and their Max series, which were really confused things for our audience. We're like, why do you need this? And they unified them not too long ago, in part because of our pushing. So it's really great to see things get pleasantly better. And again, it's stuff that a normal user, again, there's a lot of other routers out there that have interfaces that are made for IT managers, which is great if you're an IT manager, not so great if you are just an average semi-geek who wants to make a few tweaks.
Yeah, and another kind of last point on interface is that this is all accessible via the cloud, via a platform they call In Control 2, which allows you to manage multiple Peplinks or just a single one, and then see that all centrally with reporting and information about your cell signal and your Wi-Fi clients, everything you could want to see on a web page if you were remote from the device, but then also click a button and get access to your dashboard of your device as if you were locally on the network with the device. So for me, it helps when I'm not on my RV, like right now, and I want to log in and check something or look at something going on in my vehicle when I'm not there.
Yeah, so in our case, we've got our bus, our van, and our boat all have different Peplink routers in them, and wherever I'm at, I can remotely connect to the other ones via InControl, which has been very nice. Now, I guess one of the kind of the core things that this is, I guess, the core feature that sets Peplink apart in a lot of ways, and particularly it sets a lot of mobile routers apart from standard traditional residential routers, is most routers just have one upstream connection, one WAN connection. That is, whether it's your cable company or DSL or it's your T-Mobile home internet, it has just one way online. MultiWAN routers actually can have multiple upstreams that you can do things with simultaneously. So you want to explain a little bit about why that's wonderful and what that is?
Yeah, I mean, Peplink has really taken this idea of like anything possible you could use to get on the internet, like Starbucks free Wi-Fi, or a cellular modem, or a Starlink, or maybe tethering your cell phone with a USB cable. What if we could make all of those things, those internet sources, available on a single dashboard, and you could see them all in one place, and you could use them all at the same time? And that's, you know, they're you know, a lot of people think of Peplink as a cellular modem or a cellular router, and in reality, I think they really much more are focused on multi-WAN. Whatever is possible you can plug into this thing, we'll make it work for internet.
Yeah, and a lot of their enterprise customers, the reason they have that is they might have their internet that is 95% reliable at their branch office, but when the main internet's down, they have to have something that fails over automatically to cellular or to satellite or something else. So having that sort of redundancy is what made Peplink useful in the enterprise market, and then it's been branching out into mobile, because mobile is all about unreliable connections. And even if you're focused on cellular, the different carriers have different strengths and weaknesses. So you start combining, you can have AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile all in your arsenal working together. Combine that with Starlink. Combine the more redundancy you have, the better off you are. And Peplink makes that sort of redundancy easier than pretty much any other hardware that we've ever experimented with. And part of that is, I guess, on the modem front is a lot of the Peplink hardware has cellular modems. Not all of their devices have integrated cellular, but the ones that do, every time they have a cellular modem, each cellular modem has 2 SIM slots. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so it just gives you flexibility. So each of the modems inside of your router, some routers have 1 modem, some have 2, some have 4. That's kind of the complement. You could go even higher than that, but for our audience, I think 4 would be the absolute max. We'll get into how you can daisy chain them in a minute, but then you can have multiple SIM cards associated with each of those modems. So maybe you have a big high gigabyte Verizon SIM as an example in slot A, and then in slot B, perhaps a lower gigabyte failover or backup plan on another carrier that costs less, that you don't necessarily use all the time, but you can have it automatically fail over if there's a coverage issue with the first one, or if you hit your gigabyte limit, you can have it automatically fail over. Just a lot of flexibility to give you those multiple slots.
Yeah. Now, one of the important things that some people get confused about is multiple SIM slots doesn't mean multiple simultaneous connections. So you could have 2 modems, each modem can be online simultaneously, but you have 2 SIM slots, only one SIM is connected at a time internally. So you can, by software, switch between the SIMs, but it's not instantaneous. So if you have your SIM in slot A is got a bad connection and you tell it to switch to slot B, it could take several minutes to reboot the modem and reconnect via SIM B and stuff like that, and then again several minutes to switch back. So it's nice to have that redundancy that a second SIM can give you, and it's very handy to have them. You don't have to fumble with those little cards and putting in the slots to physically swap SIMs. But if you want real instant failover or the ability to use 2 connections at once, that's when having 2 modems comes in really handy, not just the multiple SIM slots.
Yeah, and then the multiple SIM slots becomes much easier to manage when you have multiple modems, because one of your modems just goes offline for a minute while it's rebooting to the other SIM, but you're still online with the other modem. Yes. So anybody who's like, I just need to stay connected, connectivity is mission critical, I would steer towards look at a multi-modem device or another connection like Starlink, so that when your modem's power cycling or switching SIMs, you're not losing your connection.
It's amazing how long 3 minutes can feel when you're switching around like that and being offline.
Yeah, and you're texting your Zoom meeting going, I'll be right back.
Yeah. In addition to multiple modems, like some Peplink routers have multiple road modems, some of them also have multiple Ethernet WAN ports as well. So if you've got other external devices like Starlink or like T-Mobile home internet box, or like a lot of hotspots have Ethernet out, you could, or if you're at a campground with cable modem, or any other wired connections, you can bring them together via these extra Ethernet WAN ports. And there was a feature that Peplink introduced not too long ago that we've got a past webinar on called virtual WAN that lets you basically define a LAN port as a WAN port as well, even if that LAN port is somewhere else on your network on a managed switch. So you can get some really flexible capabilities of adding even more inputs into the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. I think pretty much the standard now is just about any router you pick up with an active PrimeCare subscription will have at least 2 wired WANs with the virtual WAN function.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That is pretty handy to just keep adding more and more connections. And another way to add connections, this is a feature that is very rarely found in routers that aren't targeting kind of a specific mobile niche, is a feature called Wi-Fi as WAN, and that's using some other upstream Wi-Fi network as a WAN connection for your router that your router is sharing with everything else. So for boats, this means using Marina Wi-Fi, which we are actually using right now as part of one of our connections, is the connecting upstream to Marina Wi-Fi here. In campgrounds, it's upstream to campground Wi-Fi, and that's great because oftentimes when campgrounds or marinas have invested in good Wi-Fi, it's good if you're standing on top of your RV. It's not really good if you're inside your RV with a small phone or laptop or tablet with tiny little antennas in it. So having your router be able to make that connection and then share it is super powerful.
Yeah, we in our property in New Hampshire is cellular challenged. There's pretty much no cellular up there. And my go-to connectivity is Starlink, which is great, but has some latency issues and dropout issues. And then I bond it together with the Wi-Fi as WAN from my DSL that I have up there, and it creates a really reliable connection.
Yep. And then here, I think this might be the last of the other many ways to bring in another WAN option is a decent number of Peplink routers have USB ports, and the USB ports can be used to tether to smartphones, not iPhones yet, but Android phones, and to a lot of typical mobile hotspots, so you can charge them and connect to them just by plugging in that USB cable. So you've got yet another way to add more inputs into the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. The max adapters are nice because it's much easier to hook up external antennas with the Peplink branded USB modems, but they are pricey. That's the downside.
Yeah, so Peplink has their own USB tethered version, tethered hardware, and I've seen a lot of people who just like the flexibility of being able to just plug into their phone and use their phone as an upstream connection. You can use that via Wi-Fi as WAN because your phone can make a Wi-Fi hotspot, or just plug it in and tether it to a Peplink as you just need a backup connection while you're working on your other connections and stuff. Now synergy mode is, I guess, kind of another way that Peplinks can bond and unite their powers to put multiple Peplinks together to act as one. If you want to try and explain synergy.
Yeah, I mean, it was born out of a conversation that I think a lot of us were having as we upgraded our Peplink connectivity fleet. Being on the road over 3 years, a new version comes out and you're like, oh, it's got the latest 5G or whatever, and then you have this legacy, the old router that you have, and we're always like, maybe it would be so cool if I could use both of these and they acted like one. And Peplink delivered with synergy mode, and that you can effectively daisy chain with a standard Ethernet cable to Peplink devices and whatever internet sources are on that second device, Wi-Fi as WAN or a cellular modem or whatever, will appear on the primary device as on your dashboard. So, basically can effectively almost double the amount of connections you have. And it comes in really handy if you have an older device that's maybe 4G or it's laying around and you're like, I just wish I could add bandwidth. That's one of the cool features.
Add more redundancy. It's like it might be your older 4G router is just going to put a backup SIM in it, and it gives you just like one more carrier into the mix, one more modem that's always live and active. We've played around with, I think we've had 11 connections simultaneously through our Peplink Max BR2 router using Synergy mode to control Peplink HD1 Dome Pro that is up on the radar arch of our boat. So that's what's bringing in the Wi-Fi as WAN, because it's mounted way up high where it has a great view of the marina, and it's bringing that Wi-Fi signal down, and it's also got a cellular modem inside of it. So Synergy mode lets me bring those connections from that dome mounted up on the radar arch and bring them into the more powerful BR2 router inside, which also has 2 cellular connections of its own. Hey, more ways to connect.
Yes, I mean, we talked about the physical SIM slots on the back of the device, but eSIM is becoming more and more popular, which means that you can essentially provision a data plan without needing a physical SIM card. And the Peplink devices, I believe the majority of them give you 2 eSIM profiles per modem. And while the carriers are still kind of figuring out their way on how to allow you to activate eSIM plans, we're seeing stuff come up, and you can get some plans directly from Peplink. They don't tend to be the cheapest per gig, but they are out there. That is an option. And then Fusion SIM is a bit different. That's a physical SIM that's located in a SIM injector, which is like a device just full of SIMs that you can connect to via the internet. Most people won't care what that is, but at Mobile Must Have, you can use our Fusion SIM plans to get access to high gigabyte data plans without needing a SIM.
Yeah, so we're actually, one of our many connections that are live right now is we're using a T-Mobile plan that has no SIM card inside our router here. It is using a SIM card that is in some data center up in Massachusetts or New Hampshire, wherever
Connecticut,
you're at.
yeah.
Connecticut's where your data center is. Yeah, so we're using a SIM card that we don't physically have, and that makes it really easy to set up, particularly because in that case, that SIM card is being used in the dome, which is up on the radar arch, and physically crawling up there and having to dismantle things to physically change the SIM cards, not practical. So Peplink kind of solves that problem in a pretty creative way of being able to remotely provision SIMs.
Yeah, we don't, giving a little kind of peek behind the curtain, before this call started, we were troubleshooting one of the Fusion SIM connections went offline. I don't know what happened. It might have been the carrier had an issue or whatnot, but the farm just cycled through and served up a different data plan, and then you were reconnected in a few minutes, and that saves a lot of headaches of phone calls and other stuff.
Now, speaking of climbing up on the roof, if you are using a router that is inside your RV or your boat and you want to get a better signal than you have inside, particularly if you're in something like an Airstream that's got aluminum walls shielding you in all directions, having external cellular antennas is very important. And all the Peplink devices that have cellular have external antenna ports, whether 2 for 4G or 4 for each 5G modem, that lets you put an antenna or 2 on the roof, which is a great way to get better signal.
Yep, and some RVs come pre-installed with roof antennas, and we've got some kits optional that allow you to hook the Peplink up to the factory installed antenna as an option as well. They're not always the best antennas, but if you got it, it's better than nothing.
It's always better than being on the inside. Now we're talking about some of the cool software features that have actually been very useful, particularly back in the day of very stingy, miserly data plans where you're always worried about who used up all the data and put you into overage charges or past your throttling limits and where your connection suddenly grinds to a halt. Peplink has kind of enterprise-grade data tracking of who's using what data deep inside the user interface, so you can see how your data is being burned up and where it's going to.
Yeah, not only can you view that on In Control with like their website, but just right in the router, I would frequently, when I'm on the road, it's becoming less of a concern with me now, just because of, these high gigabyte data plans mean I don't care as much, but you just be able to look at your hourly, your instantaneous, your daily, your monthly usage, and then break it down by all of those different connections. So is it SIM A on modem 1? Is it SIM B on modem 1? And to be able to just see everything in the report lets you really know where your money's going on all those expensive data plans.
And if you have family members who are responsible for burning through crazy amounts of data, you can catch them in the act, or you might catch a device in the act. Like we've had people who discover that their Xbox is booting up at 3 in the morning and downloading 60 gigs of game updates, and what's going on? Oh, why did I burn through it? Check this. Check your logs. Where'd it go? What device did that? And
Absolutely.
Then I guess the corollary of that is then you can put restrictions in place of putting speed limits or connection limits and just outbound policies to try to manage those connections so that you're like we often have it set up so like our video streaming devices, our Apple TVs and everything connect over Starlink, where dropouts don't really matter, and Starlink has no 4K throttles and stuff. So we watch video streaming over Starlink, but a lot of other things, particularly normal interactive stuff and web browsing and uploads, we want to focus on cellular. So we can have rules to define how things go and use these multiple connections simultaneously.
Yeah, it's a great, I don't mind watching 1080p video. So I impose restrictions to use less data so I don't see 4K, because I don't want to use 20 gigabytes with one movie. But to each his own, depending on what plans you have access to. But you can do anything.
It might be smart, because if once you get hooked on 4K and you get spoiled, then you don't want to go back. So just keep yourself from ever experiencing it, and you're probably good.
So true.
Then speaking of all the different ways to put these different connections to use, there's a lot of features. And this is kind of Peplink's special sauce, is the features of how you use these connections. Whether you're doing bonding, which is they call it speed fusion, is their marketing term for it, is the ability to basically split your data stream up across all your possible connections upstream, and then a server on the internet brings them back together and makes one virtual connection out. So it kind of gives you a lot of extra reliability and potentially some significantly extra speed in the right circumstances. Failover means that if a connection goes down, you don't notice it. Load balancing is, speed fusion with that is bonding within kind of a more round robin fashion. You don't get the extra reliability, but you can extra speed of combining connections together. And just there's other more advanced techniques as well. So there's a lot there about how you can do things with your connections.
Yeah, and Peplink's really been, bonding is not something, like you said, speed fusion is a marketing term for a technology that exists out there that other devices have. But what I think Peplink's done a really good job of, as they've targeted towards consumers, is the fact that you can set up a bonded connection with their cloud servers in what is essentially about 5 clicks on the interface. It's so simple compared to when we started. It was a lot more complicated than
that. We had originally written a very long, still a consumer approachable guide to how to set up on a virtual private server someplace to host your own bonding server, to do this, to do that, to do all these things, to do bonding on your own. And then Peplink enabled their own, first it was called Speed Fusion, a cloud, where they're basically saying, no, here it's just built in, one click. You can buy data from us fairly cheap, and it takes all the hassle away. So they made bonding actually something consumer approachable as opposed to advanced geek fun. And speaking of advanced geek fun, this is one of my favorite features from Peplink, going back from long before we started having fun talks with them, is the ability to do some band selection and manually control what bands your cellular connection is going out over. This has been one of our favorite kind of pro techniques for getting online and getting better connections in really signal challenged areas, because every cellular carrier is broadcasting on a whole bunch of different frequencies, and the modem will try to get you online, but it's not necessarily going to pick the best frequencies where you're at, particularly for what you want to do, whether you want to focus on uploads or downloads or whatnot. And being able to manually say, no, use this band, don't use that band, can make the world of difference in getting online.
Oh, this saved my bacon last week while I was in Ireland. I was setting up a rural cottage in Kilkenny in the middle of nowhere, South Ireland, for a family member. And the router just wanted to talk to the tower and give me full 4 bars of 4G, which was getting me 50 meg down, 20 meg up. It was respectable. But by using band selection, I was able to find a 5G tower, which only gave me 2 bars, 250 meg down, and 100 meg up. And I'm like, please stop connecting to the more powerful tower. I understand that it's there, but I want to focus on 5G bands. And by being able to do this, it just made the experience so much better.
Yeah, one of our pro techniques, and we've got a whole webinar and guide that goes into all the tricks and tips for how to really use this feature. But one thing is, like, AT&T is responsible for FirstNet, the public safety bands, and telling your router to only use band 14 sometimes can get you past a lot of congestion on AT&T. So if you're having a lot of trouble and it says you got 5 bars, but particularly your uploads are really, really dragging on AT&T, sometimes just saying, no, use band 14, the FirstNet band. If there's not an actual emergency going on that is prioritizing public safety, suddenly you're basically driving on the shoulder of the road and cruising along in a way that you'd only get if you were able to manually intervene like this. Super powerful feature. Oh, another fun, super powerful, geeky feature is most Peplink routers, and unfortunately not the new, one of our new favorites, the B1 5G, but most Peplink routers have a GPS antenna, and they log everywhere they go. And you can, if you're using their web portal, you can bring up a map showing where you were on a certain span of time.
Yeah, and I mean, you can even track like the speed of the vehicle over time and do all sorts of fun stuff. I kind of always tell the story about a repair facility driving my RV way too fast, and when I had some damage inside, I was able to track it down using this feature.
Yeah, and this is a map we created to illustrate our blog post of our trip out to see the eclipse and everything. So this is just a recording from just a week ago of our cross-country road trip in our van from our boat, and we just find it super fun to have an easy way to share your exact tracks and do fun things with them. So fun GPS features there. Now we've got a few of because this is an advanced router and it's got a lot of settings and things you can tweak. Some features that some geeks look for is the ability to do some advanced tweaking of one particular setting is called the TTLs, the time to live settings, that on some carriers, some of the time can help you use phone or tablet plans and routers and not worry about data limits so much. Against terms of service usually, and not recommended, but because it's a pro router that has some certain settings available in it, because there are a few legitimate uses for this sort of thing. Hey, Peplink has this, and a lot of consumer routers never do. So something there. And PrimeCare. You want to tell us what PrimeCare is?
Well, PrimeCare it started out essentially like a hardware warranty, but then it started to evolve to also unlock certain features and benefits that are either hosted by Peplink via the cloud, like in control, the ability to remotely access your router via the cloud, but also provide you certain advanced features like Speed Fusion, which comes included with the Peplink purchase for 1 year, with between 250 and 1 terabyte of data usually, depending on the model router that you get, and then you can top that up with $40 per terabyte kind of purchases after that. But at its core, PrimeCare gets you that hardware warranty and then access to features like Speed Fusion, that virtual WAN, which lets you turn a LAN port into a WAN port, synergy mode on some of the devices, and more.
Yeah, so PrimeCare has been kind of a really nice extension of every Peplink router comes with your first year of PrimeCare free, and then depending on the tier of the router, how much each additional year costs can vary. But the nice thing we like about Peplink is PrimeCare is optional. Almost everything you do on the router still can be done if you don't pay for PrimeCare, with a few exceptions. unlike some other competitors, like Cradlepoint in particular, where if you're not paying for the ongoing support contract for your hardware, you can't even change your Wi-Fi connectivity, your Wi-Fi network name and stuff going forward. So a lot of other more enterprise devices, they consider hardware plus service is required. And if you're not paying for the ongoing service, your hardware stops working mostly. Whereas Peplink has got kind of, you can choose, is PrimeCare worth it for you? Or, well, if you're not paying for PrimeCare, you still get 99% of the functionality. You still get firmware updates. You still get the ability to manage your own router, just not through the cloud and stuff like that. And we're going to be diving a lot more into PrimeCare and the trade-offs and why you might want it and why you might not and everything. That's going to be our next month's webinar. So May 2024 for our member-exclusive webinar. And we may or may not make that one a public recording too at some point.
Yeah, they've really kind of kept it flexible. So like virtual WAN's a great example where you can get it in a PrimeCare, which maybe for an entry-level router would be like $49 a year, or, $100 a year in that range. Or you could buy the virtual WAN license one time and just own it, and it's permanently activated. So there's a lot of flexibility for how folks want to exist in their technology purchases.
And then, so just to kind of wrap this up, is we've because we both were just kind of independently Peplink fans, and you're now one of Peplink's biggest vendors, particularly targeting this market. We've jointly worked to create a whole lot of Peplink resources for the RV and marine communities, and those are all at rvmobileinternet.com/Peplink-resources. We've got guides and reviews and videos and news articles, and your staff actually hangs out in our forum and provides technical support on Peplink gear, even for people who didn't buy from you, which we think is incredibly wonderful and generous. So, hey, thank you.
They tend to buy from us the next time around when we do that. So it's it's not entirely non-self-serving, but we appreciate it so much, and we've done so much on these in-depth guides, folks. Like when people look at something like a Peplink, and it could be a large purchase. Some of their more kind of full-time kind of geared routers could be $1,000, and north of that, if you're looking at something even more advanced for a larger group of people or family in an RV. So you want to know that from that purchase through your evolution of kind of growing your skill set, that you can figure out how to use these advanced features at your own pace with the guides, and then through the forum have access to support. And then obviously if you purchase from us, we give you support as part of your purchase as well. So but it's been a lot of fun. I think we're up to like 20 plus really kind of in-depth webinars that go through everything. VLANing, synergy mode, advanced dashboards. I mean, I think we've covered most of the good stuff. I can't imagine you'd be lost. It's good resources.
Pretty awesome collection of resources. And so I think that wraps up the official stuff we are going to cover for today. So this is probably going to be where we, unless you have any on-topic questions here. So we're going to make this the point where we end the official recording. So I guess we can announce that we've already announced the next month is the being on PrimeCare. And these are things that we do every month. We always find some really cool, fun topic to talk about. And Erik and I, or Erik and Cherie, go deep and explore it and share it here. And then the recordings get shared with our members. So thank you, everyone who's joined live. And we're going to end the recording here and hang out. If anybody is here live, feel free to queue up any questions, and we'll chat with you about anything Peplink related. So recording out. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
These videos are brought to you by our premium members, our mobile internet aficionados. They make it possible for us to track this news and create these videos. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, or better yet, consider becoming a member yourself.